Hey everyone, it's Christine Gritman here with Social. I do this show every week where I talk to my smart friends about a given topic that's going to be useful to all of us. And today I have here Jessica Stong of Lives of Courage, and you'll never guess what she's here to talk about. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Christine. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you back. Jessica was actually on my show a few months ago because we re-met at the Amy Porterfield Entrepreneur Experience event in San Diego. And I'm so glad we did, because even though we were in touch since Social Media Day Wichita in June 2018, the universe had to bring us back together. I'm so happy it did. So Jessica, courage. Let's launch right in. First of all, what is Lives of Courage, which is your brand?
Awesome. So I help inspire everyday acts of courage. I believe that we are all called to be more in this life, to be courageous. I grew up thinking that courage was about being fearless, right?
Yeah.
Like doing something that's self-sacrificing for the greater good. And so I thought I was never courageous.
Because you felt fear because you're human.
Right, exactly. And here's what I learned, that being courageous is acting in spite of fear or because of fear and still doing it anyway, not letting fear stop us in our tracks, hold us back, and we're not letting those stories that we tell ourselves about what we should be doing or what we should look like or what courage looks like. We just stand in truth and in our own power, and we're like, we can do this now. So I
love that.
Feel passionate about courage.
That's really amazing. And how did you have the courage to choose to make courage your focus of your entire career?
It was really difficult. So I studied psychology. I have a graduate degree in psychology. So I did research with a professor that wrote The Psychology of Hope, right?
Ooh,
and so
that's a good title.
I believe Dr. Rick Snyder is his name. And I believe that to have hope and to have, all of the positive character values and characteristics that we need in our lives to live and to thrive and to grow, it takes courage. It takes courage to show up. And my life just kind of went this way. There are two, I think, really big moments that I was like, okay, it's time to start my own business. I had been a coach before, but a generalized coach. Mm-hmm. And
like a life coach, right? We're not talking football field here.
I mean, I would be great at that, right?
You're very motivating.
So much. But so my son was diagnosed with 2E, or twice exceptional. Mm-hmm. So he's on the gifted, gifted over here, and also has significant learning differences, dyslexia, ADHD, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And I grew up with a similar profile, but we didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that, I just dealt with it. I dealt with my delightful ADHD mm-hmm. and tried to focus. So that was one of the aspects, or one of the reasons I started Lives of Courage, to help other people see that, it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter. We all can do hard things and challenging things and be courageous and have resilience. The other was when I shared my story. In college, in graduate school, I was the sexual assault response coordinator.
That's such important work. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, carrying around those stories and empowering women to come forward and to say, this stops now. But along that, I was sexually assaulted at another university while I was doing
work. Oh my goodness.
I'm
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Oh, Christine, you're of course, you were so lovely and amazing. How, at the time, I sat in shame. I did not tell anybody because all the spiral, the shame, I should. That shouldn't have happened to me.
What were you wearing? Why were you in that situation? Oh, all the hideous victim blaming that goes on, and all that weight they pile onto the weight of the event itself.
Oh my heavens. And I didn't deal with that. I pushed it back, mm-hmm. and I didn't deal with it until about maybe 4 years. I mean, I had done therapy and done all the things, but privately didn't tell those closest to me.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I wrote about it for a blog post. There's a local group, Wichita Moms, and so I write for them. And I wrote about it from the perspective of the Me Too movement while raising boys. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 sons. And so we talk about consent. No means no. But I used it from the perspective of the survivor. And that that took so much courage. But in the telling of my story, I was transformed. Like my life, I finally stepped into who I was. And I want to give everyone else that opportunity so they don't have to wait, or they can even learn about courage as it's happening in their life and don't have to wait 20 years, right?
Wow, that is so incredibly powerful and so incredibly vulnerable. There's an incredible courage in vulnerability, especially. It's not about being stoic. Vulnerability is one of the most courageous acts that one can engage in.
Oh, sister, that is so true. And I think that oftentimes, you know, as I mentioned before, the stories that we hear as kids and as the stories of courage are of knocking, like pulling yourself up and doing all the things and not showing the real side of you, or the humanness in our experiences and in our shared experience. And so in the act, we learn what courage is. And I think that if we can teach people from the get-go that we are courageous every day, we don't have that disconnect or that cognitive dissonance that happens when we're struggling with what it looks like.
That's incredible, because so many people, if you ask 9 out of 10 people, they'll tell you that they're not particularly courageous. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating that, but a lot of people don't feel like they're living with courage because they have a misunderstanding of what courage is. How do you define courage?
So it's so interesting you say this, because I am preparing for a TEDx talk application, right? Ooh. So it took courage to say I'm applying because I don't want people to see me fail to talk about courage, but I have had the great opportunity. I have 47 interviews scheduled in a 2-week span.
That's incredible.
And of course I did get to interview you, and I'm going to have you talk about the story of the Wizard of Oz as it relates to courage. I'm going to ask you to share that, because I was like, oh my gosh. I remember it was like, you changed me through that story. But,
well, I like Kansas and I like red shoes. So there you go.
Amen. I went through a whole year of my life where I only wore red shoes.
Ooh. How did I not know this?
Not? It's the red hair. So right now I've had 24 conversations about courage so far since the 1st of, I think the 4th of January. Mm-hmm. And what this it's inspired me and called me to action in bigger ways. People's stories of courage, we walk around with such courage, and we all say, oh, I'm not courageous. Mm-hmm. Like, I have heard that. So you're 9 out of 10. We'll do a study here pretty soon. But I find that's pretty true. It's shocking to me. And when I ask, I don't give people questions ahead of time because I want to hear their top of mind reaction.
Exactly. It's a conversation.
Yes. So my first question is, what does courage mean to you? And people take a step back and almost always say, I didn't expect you to ask that, even though they knew the conversation was about courage. So that always makes me so happy. And it dawned on me that courage is acting even when you're afraid.
I love that.
Courage is signing up for an interview. Courage is sharing your story when it's messy and not Instagram perfect or deeply painful. And sometimes just living through, getting up in the morning is courage. So I think about it as it relates to like acting in fear, speaking truth.
I love that. And I love that fear itself is part of the definition of courage for you. That's really key.
It is. And I think about, like, what would we do if we weren't afraid? Mm-hmm. Who would we be? What limiting beliefs, what statements do we say to ourselves that hold us back? And you and I both know that fear is important in our lives, right? Fear tells us not to cross the street when a car is coming. Fear, like, you don't have to be a neuroscience nerd like I am, right? To know that we have these fight or flight reactions. Mm-hmm. And we have this emotional part of our brain that experiences fear, and then our thinking part of our brain is like, actually, it's just a lion at the zoo. You don't need to be afraid, right?
Yes.
Like, don't freak out.
But you have to draw the distinction between a lion at the zoo and a lion right in front of you. That's how fear keeps us safe.
Exactly. So fear is such a powerful, great thing. So how do we use that and take that to then say, look, I'm going to live in courage. I'm going to use what we know. I'm going to accept coaching to change my brain, to change my life. And I think there's such beauty in that process.
And it sounds like beyond changing the brain, it sounds like it's so much about changing the actions as a result of that brain, because the fact is you're going to feel the fear either way. Do you let the fear keep you from action, or do you let the fear propel you into action?
But it's the truth. And it's what we do with what we're telling ourselves. I think about how our thoughts impact our emotions, right? Which
Absolutely.
impact our actions, which impact our results, and the beliefs we have about ourselves. And I think about, like, if we can just neurohack a piece of that and change a portion of that, we are transformed.
I love that. And of course, you work individually with people. So, I mean, they need their own different stimuli to get them out of that fear and into a place of courage, or not necessarily out of that fear, but to propel themselves forward with courage. What are some of the most common neuro hacks that you find that most people can use to just bring themselves up a notch in terms of how they're actualizing their lives?
Absolutely. Oh, darn it, Christine, you're so good at this. I love it. You could just, like, talk to me, interview me every day. I would be like, Christine, I have so much to work with. But I think about what we say to ourselves. I think that the beliefs that we hold, our thoughts are the most important route to change. And it's not as easy as saying, like, I'm not afraid, or I won't be afraid today. It is changing the thoughts. And you can't go from, like, I am terrible at doing things that scare me. You can't go from that to having a thought like, I'm so great at fear. Like, fear doesn't hold me back. You have to ladder those beliefs or those thoughts to get to that place where fear does not hold me back, and I will not be held back by fear. So I think it is working with someone to ladder those statements is powerful. And I write it. My favorite thing to do is write it every day. Write affirmations, but they have to be tailored for you. They have to be something that you believe. You can't just write affirmations that are like, I am fantastic, if you're not at that place where you're fantastic.
Yeah, you have to believe it.
You don't feel fantastic, because we all are effing fantastic, right?
I mean, I am.
You are.
And you certainly are.
I love it.
Do you draw a distinction between courage and bravery?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay,
I
so
do
they're
not.
different names for the same
draw
thing.
a distinction between courage and confidence.
Ooh, nice.
I've been asking a lot of people about the distinction, because to me, you need courage to even be confident. Courage is the fundamental piece to all the other psychological experiences or feelings in life. So if we can't even put ourselves out, if we don't have the courage to even, like, get up in the morning or put one foot in the front of the other, we can't have confidence.
Absolutely. So confidence is sort of more the behavioral manifestation of courage then?
Oh my, yes. That's exactly what I was saying. You are incredible.
Thank you. That gives me a lot of confidence, Jess.
Oh, Well, it's true. Or can we cuss on this? You know,
Sure.
I'm a cusser, but do we keep it clean?
Sure. Do what you want,
Okay.
girl. I love that. And we have Jen Cole from Wichita on with us. Hey, Jen. Love you. Jen has courage and confidence. Jen made some big strides in her life in the past couple of years, and I'm very proud of her.
Amen.
I want to ask you I hear that one of the things you've said is that it takes courage to even get up in the morning, to even get up out of bed, just to live our lives. And I know that I personally, and a lot of people that I know, we've struggled from things like clinical depression or crippling anxiety that make those things really especially hard to do in a way that they don't necessarily for the general public. So what do you see as the relationship there?
Oh, sorry, it's
That's
just
a very
thundering.
tricky question.
It is very tricky. And it's thundering here in Kansas right now.
Oh, goodness.
In the middle of winter, and there might be snow. Like, it's just chaos.
Kansas weather is crazy. We all know that from The Wizard of Oz, to get back to that one.
You never know what you're going to get. So if you hear like these loud crashes, it's thunder happening
Sounds
here right
good.
now.
That, or it's, God or whoever applauding this this conversation about courage.
Amen.
Because we're fulfilling our destinies.
Right. So I often think that, well, being a cognitive behavioral coach, right? Mm-hmm. I really love to be in the space where people are working through the brain imbalances that we often find ourselves in. I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, clinical anxiety at peaks, and
same girl, same.
Right? And so I know that if I can make a commitment to trying, to me, it's a commitment to courage. I have it written out. The clients I work with, they get a copy and we edit it and they print it out. They put it everywhere. So I know that if I see that, it's enough to just remind me, even if I stay in bed all day, even if I am overcome by the psychological experiencing of that anxiety, I am still doing the best I can. And it is incremental steps. We can't expect to go from bedridden with depression to the next day you're out of bed. And I think that's why our society wants pills. That's why I know, I still take low dose of antidepressants but we can't expect it to change everything or all the things. And so I think that is sometimes the brutal truth of our brain and the work that we do with our brains is that we have years of limiting beliefs, an unhealthy conditioning that we have to work through, that we have to be honest and real and vulnerable enough to share and to experience. I think the act of writing something down every day will push you. I know so mine is postpartum depression shows up for me like,
Yep.
I mean, Theo is 3, but let's not talk about that, right? So even writing a line a day was felt too much for me.
Yeah.
But I know that if I write, I am worthy of healing, or I will try. It is enough to prime my brain. So what we're doing, without getting too in the weeds, is we are creating new neural networks. Mm-hmm. So we're redirecting our brains to think positively. We have a negativity bias as is. It's just the way our brains function. And so we're like, we'll just redirect it a different way by saying things again and again. I mean, if anybody's done cognitive behavioral therapy, it's the same. It's that work.
Yes, it's about going into action.
In addition to addressing pharmacology, from a medication level as well.
The medication is almost like glasses, It's like, it's not going to make you able to see everything if you're like blind, but if you're someone who's suffering from depression or anxiety, it's really more that the way forward is a little fuzzy, right? And there's no shame in needing glasses, so there shouldn't be shame in needing that pharmacological, psychological, psychiatric assistance as well.
Amen.
It's medical.
Well, and I also, Christine, it's
but if
so
you
true.
have those glasses, it can help you see.
You can see again. You can see your life. You can see before again.
Absolutely.
Because we talk a lot about gratitude as a positive psychology methodology. But if it's so dark that we can't see anything. I love that analogy.
It also sounds like I want to pick up on something you said earlier, which was in the throes of postpartum depression, it felt like too much to even write something down. But the thing you wrote is that you're worthy of healing. Sometimes it can take courage not to get out of bed. Sometimes it can take a special type of courage to know that we need that healing, to know that sometimes it actually is more important and more courageous to take off that societal mask of feeling like we have to move forward. And I was just listening to a lot of Meghan Markle interviews because she and Harry just announced that they're taking the extraordinarily courageous step of what they need to do for their own family and their own mental health, which is to step back from the very public and abusive role that they've been in. And one of the things that she said about that is she said, for a while I was trying to do this very British stiff upper lip thing. And she said, but I feel like sometimes that's really damaging internally. So can we talk about the courage of healing for a moment and what that means to you?
I think this is so recent in my life. And I don't mean to share all the stories about me. Normally I weave in other things.
You're my interview subject, girl. You do you.
All the things, Christine. So I often have powered through life. We power through. We feel overwhelmed, but we're like, if you just work hard, if you learn productivity, you will make it through or overcome or just, use that stiff upper lip or pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't acknowledge the pain or the overwhelm. And here's the deal. If we can value ourselves enough to recognize that we are worth enough to step back and to reflect and to value ourselves, one of my friends says, rest is best, right? Like at times we have to recognize what we need and value that more than what society tells us we need or we need to be or all of the things. Last year, I had a string of health issues. Like we couldn't figure out what was going on. I was in the hospital. I had lost, my face was droopy with Bell's palsy, and then I couldn't walk, so I was in the hospital.
That's terrifying, especially when you don't know why.
That's it. And it turns out it was MS, right? But it's not, I was done. My son said to me, who was 10 at the time, do you think you jinxed yourself for having lives of courage?
Oh my goodness.
Well, boom, child.
Here's some challenges for you to overcome.
And at that point, I couldn't work my way out of it because I wanted to just go back to life. I wanted to go back to the way I was before, which didn't stop. I didn't stop. I didn't want to feel, right?
Yeah.
How many times in our life, if we just keep moving, we'll forget, we can numb it.
Yes.
But when we stop and when we invite ourselves to stop, when we're forced to stop, we are given a chance to grow and to learn more about ourselves. And in that reflection, we are called to more, to action. And so that was, you know, like I was stuck at home. I had OT, PT visit. They wanted to put me in a rehab hospital. And I was like, oh no, like that's not happening.
Oh, that's horrifying, especially for a mother of small kids. My goodness.
Right. It was. And I sat in that self-pity. I would watch people walk in my neighborhood outside, and I would feel such anger that they could walk and I couldn't. Like, who am I? That's not me. But in the moment. And so what I can tell anyone going through any situation, whether it's divorce, I mean, like, I've heard all the things in these interviews, divorce, death, you know, like changing jobs, pivoting, like coming to recognize that you are not just a mom, that you are more. Or I spoke with someone who, it's just incredible what we go through and we don't always share with others because we're all living our lives, right? Mm-hmm. What I can tell anyone is that nothing is permanent. That is a good thing. And that is something you hold to, that your struggle and that season of your life will not always dominate, will not always define your experience of who you are. So hold true, have courage, take courage, because you are worth every bit of your life. You are worth every piece to just go out, just hold on. That's what I always say.
That is incredible. Yeah, the only way out is through, right? And I'm sure that nothing is permanent is especially echoed from the fact that you live in Kansas and the weather.
Oh my gosh. Now, can we, speaking of Kansas, do we have time for you to tell the most amazing example of courage that I've ever heard? And so can you tell us the story, Dorothy?
Oh, yes. Oh, I love this. So this came from our interview, which I think is going to be a podcast of yours or something soon, right? So, so basically, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she can see the Emerald City, right? The entire time, she knows that what she wants to get to is the Emerald City. She's got that vision, and she can literally see it up ahead. But the fact is, you know, it starts out with follow the Yellow Brick Road. And when it starts out, yes, it's in beautiful Munchkin Land. It's very well lit. There's flowers. There's little people singing to her. It's all over. It's amazing. It's not a terribly intimidating path. But that path winds up going through the woods. There's, you know, a lion, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. There's trees throwing apples at her. You know, there's all these things. She winds up in a poppy field and falling asleep on opium. You know, there's all these things along that pathway where she could very easily have said, no, this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to get to that glowing Emerald City. I didn't sign up for all this stuff. The path changed. And not only did she have to continue going through in order to get to the Emerald City, otherwise, you know, it wouldn't have happened, but she was able to recognize the opportunities on that path. When she went through the woods, she wound up finding the Tin Man, finding the lion. They became allies on her journey because sometimes life leads us where we need to be on our way to where we're trying to get. And even in the poppy field, she wasn't able to do anything herself to get herself out of that. But because she had already established a positive relationship with Glinda, that was something that she took advantage of on her path earlier that was able to help her later on her path when she couldn't help herself. So it's all about recognizing the only way out is through, being in a place where you're open enough to see the opportunities on your path where you didn't necessarily intend to be in order to find something in that experience that will help propel you forward. This is so funny. You're the interview subject this time. But thanks for encouraging me to share that.
When you said that, I was like, boom, like it reminded me when I was in college, I loved to make t-shirts and sell them to friends. And they never turned out well. Like I would iron on the letters.
They were good enough for the people who bought them.
They loved it. There was like a coffee shop that sold them. And one of my t-shirts that I made was, "You are your own wizard."
Ooh.
Because Dorothy was like, there is a wizard who will solve all my problems. Also, it was a white male faking.
Yeah.
Right? Can we
sure was.
You can get yourself You can get yourself anywhere you need to go. You just have to keep going and believe in yourself and believe. So, like, we don't need a wizard. We have ourselves. We can do this.
All we need is a pair of fabulous red shoes.
Amen. Sparkly if possible, but we'll take red.
Well, on that note, thank you so much to Jessica Stong of Lives of Courage in Wichita, Kansas, though she can help you anywhere. Definitely look her up. I've got her links here. I, of course, am Christine Gritman. I do this show every week. Next week, I'm going to be talking to another coach also about courage, Lori Ostrovsky of Simply Leap. So we're going to talk about what it means to simply leap, what you do with that courage to propel yourself forward. This is my theme for January 2020 because we all need to get into that headspace, right? I promise I'll be back to social media in February. February's LinkedIn month. Anyway, I encourage anyone who's watching us live to make sure to tune in every week for this show on Facebook and YouTube, and people who are listening on the podcast. I would love it if you would subscribe, give us a rating, and make sure to follow Jessica as well. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.